Today's Talk About It Tuesday question is, can you talk about rental arbitrage? Now that is hilarious to me, this term rental arbitrage, because there is nothing new under the sun. And what happens is people who are trying to sell you things come up with these new and fancy words to talk about old concepts. So let me explain what this rental arbitrage trend is and give you a little history. So right now people are selling these products and these systems and their courses on how you can make money doing short-term rentals like Airbnb, and you don't even have to own the property. And what the concept is, you rent a place for one price, and then you put Airbnb or some other short-term rental in at a much higher price, and you keep the difference. So way back, let me just tell you a story. So back in 2008, according to hostel bookers and hostelworld.com, my partner and I had the #1 hostel in New York City. And so this is pre-Airbnb. There was no such thing as Airbnb. So we were doing vacation rentals back in 2008, before there was an Airbnb. And the first building we did it in, we owned the building. Second building we did it in, we owned the building. We were ambitious and wanted to continue expanding while keeping our costs down. So way back then, we had already figured out, why own the property when we can just rent the property at market value? And we knew the amount of money that was coming in, that we could easily pay the rent and make a significant profit without having to qualify for a 30-year mortgage, without having to come up with a down payment, without having a 30-year obligation on a debt. And if the property didn't work out, we knew, all right, maybe we have a year lease, we can walk away. So we were doing that way back then. So our third location, we rented. Our fourth location, we rented. And so it's funny to me now, we're talking about so many years later, 14, 15 years later, that people are pushing this idea as if it's something new and something that everybody should pursue. Now, it is not for everyone, and everyone can't do it. So let's just talk about the concept. Again, you are doing a lease. You are renting in the traditional way, and then you are subletting, meaning you are then using the space for another business, for short-term rentals, for long-term rentals, whatever it is you want to do at a higher price, and you're keeping the difference. So one thing that happened in New York City as a result of the hostel industry, by the way, it wasn't Airbnb, and Airbnb actually went to court with the state government in New York. It is illegal, because we have a housing crisis, a housing shortage. It is illegal to do short-term rentals in an apartment building in New York City. And what is considered an apartment building? More than a two-family house. So the idea of using this arbitrage, or this rent to sublet, which we used to call it, is not necessarily profitable for short-term rentals, meaning vacation rentals, meaning anything that's less than 1 year considered short-term rentals. So there are a lot of different programs where you can use the concept, but you can't do it for transitional housing is what it's called. So you can't really do that and make a lot of profit unless you just have a lot of properties that you're renting and subletting. So you have to know whether or not where you live, it is legal to even do and be able to make money. The second thing is, you cannot do it if your landlord does not agree to it, which means your lease agreement must say that you have a right to sublet. If you don't have it in your lease agreement that you have a right to sublet, and you do, and your landlord finds out, you have violated your lease, and then you will be out of there. So sometimes it is difficult to convince a landlord to, knowing, especially it's going to be transitional, knowing this is going to be a lot of wear and tear, a lot of different people who don't care about the place in there. It is difficult to rent at the market price when they know you're going to make a lot of money. So sometimes they'll charge you a little more which is fine. Again, if the spread is enough where, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the landlord gets as long as you get the profit you desire. And you got to know if there's a market for it. So if where you're at, you can rent and sublet, but it's not an attraction, then you have to find something different than transitional housing. There are plenty of programs, though. There are programs for battered women. There are programs for people who have HIV and AIDS. There are programs for veterans. There are programs for people transitioning out of the prison system. There are, you name it, there are dozens and dozens and dozens for developmentally disabled adults, for elderly. The list goes on and on. There are plenty of programs where people are looking for housing. And if you can't do transitional housing, that might be a better option for you if you're going to do it. But let's look at the downside of it. The upside of it, we already know, right? Low barrier to entry, low cost, no 30-year obligation, no huge down payment. That's obvious, the benefits. The downside is there's no security. And so if you do get a program that's profitable and you invest in it, and then you do the sublet and you have your agreement with them, at the end of the year your landlord decides not to renew your lease, then you just have to find another place and you'll probably lose that program. The other side of that is they don't want to throw you out, but they want to renew your lease at a much higher price because they see how much money you're making. And then you have to make a decision whether you're going to leave voluntarily or add on to your costs. So rental arbitrage, lease and sublet, rent to rent, whatever you want to call it, it's not a new concept. It is a tried and true concept that can work for people who don't want to necessarily own a property or don't have the money to invest in a property that they want to own, who want to try out a particular area without a 30-year commitment to it, want to try out a business model without a long-term obligation. It is a great way to test the market, enter it at a low cost. But again, you have to know the laws where you're at, and you have to have an agreement with the landlord to make it work. So I love the question. It's a very creative way to enter into real estate and make a lot of profit if you do it right. So I'd love to hear your experience with it. If you have some, I'd love to hear your questions, your comments, your concerns. Please like, share, and subscribe. Keep the questions coming, and I'll see you next Tuesday.